He arrived in a new city with nothing. No home, no money, no business, just the clothes on his back. A few years later, he became one of the wealthiest men in history. But that's not why his story is unforgettable. It's what he gave away, and the shocking request he made on his deathbed that still amazes historians today. By the end of this video, you'll understand why his life may be the greatest lesson on money and true success ever recorded. This is the story of a man who owned everything, yet lived as though he owned nothing. Long before he became known as one of the richest companions of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he was simply a merchant from the tribe of Quraysh in Makkah. His name before Islam was Abd Amr. He was already skilled in trade, sharp, disciplined, and known for his honesty in business dealings, a rare trait even back then. When he accepted Islam in its earliest days, everything changed. He wasn't just changing his beliefs, he was putting his entire life on the line. Accepting Islam in Makkah at that time meant risking your wealth, your family ties, your safety, and sometimes your very life. But there was something deeper happening here. What he was about to lose would later come back to him in a way nobody could have predicted. And that's exactly where this story gets interesting. Understand the risk here. In Makkah, tribal identity was everything. Wealth, protection, and status were tied directly to your clan. The moment Abdul Rahman declared his faith in Islam, he wasn't just adopting new beliefs, he was cutting himself off from the very system that had made him successful in the first place. His former business partners could turn on him, his trade routes could be blocked, his own relatives could disown him. This is the price so many early Muslims paid, and Abdul Rahman ibn Awf paid it too, without hesitation. He had built years of reputation, connections, and capital, and he was willing to let all of it go for something he couldn't see, couldn't touch, and couldn't prove to anyone else except through his own conviction. That kind of decision tells you everything about the kind of man he really was. And it's precisely because he was willing to lose everything that what happened afterward became so extraordinary. When the persecution in Makkah became unbearable for the Muslims, the command came to migrate first to Abyssinia and later to Medina. Abdul Rahman ibn Awf was among those who made the journey to Medina. But migration back then wasn't like moving to a new city today. It meant walking away from your house, your trade routes, your warehouses, your customers, everything he had spent years building. He arrived in Medina essentially empty-handed. Now here's where most people expect the story to slow down. A man loses his wealth, so naturally you'd think it would take him decades to recover, if ever. But what happened next defied every expectation. And it started with a single piece of advice that changed the course of his entire life. When the Muhajirin, the migrants from Makkah, arrived in Medina, the Prophet ﷺ paired each of them with an Ansari, a local resident of Medina, in a bond of brotherhood. Abdul Rahman ibn Awf was paired with Sa'd ibn Arabi, one of the wealthiest men in Medina. Sa'd made an extraordinary offer. He told Abdul Rahman he was willing to split his wealth in half and give one portion to him. He even offered to divorce one of his two wives so that Abdul Rahman could marry her. Most people, especially someone who had just lost everything, would have accepted such generosity without hesitation. But Abdul Rahman's response revealed something about his character that would define the rest of his life. He declined the offer. Instead, he asked for just one thing: to be shown the way to the marketplace. That single request is where his entire empire began. And what happened in that marketplace over the next few years is nothing short of remarkable. Abdul Rahman ibn Awf started small. He began trading in butter and cheese, buying and selling in the market of Medina. No shortcuts, no handouts, just his own effort, sharp business instinct, and an unshakable trust in Allah. Slowly his trade grew, then it grew faster. Within a relatively short period, his business expanded into caravans, trade routes, and large-scale commerce. Historical accounts describe his caravans as being so large that when they entered Medina, the ground would shake and the sound could be heard throughout the city. He became known not just for his wealth, but for how he earned it through fairness, honesty, and hard work, never through deception or exploitation. In an era where trade could easily become ruthless, his reputation for integrity made people trust him even more, and that trust only multiplied his success. But here's the twist that separates him from almost every other wealthy figure in history. As his fortune grew larger and larger, so did something else entirely. Something that most rich men throughout history have struggled to hold on to. Abdul Rahman ibn Awf became so wealthy that historical narrations describe his estate as including vast amounts of gold, hundreds of camels, extensive lands, and enormous stores of goods. By some accounts, he was among the wealthiest men in the history of Arabia at that time. Yet despite all of this, he never let his wealth control him. Instead, he saw it as a trust, a responsibility, not a possession. He famously said that money did not change him because he never let it become his master. Then came the moment that shows exactly why he is remembered the way he is today. When the Muslims faced difficult and desperate times, whether through military expeditions, famine, or urgent community needs, Abdul Rahman would step forward and fund entire portions of it out of his own pocket. One account describes him donating an enormous caravan of provisions to the people of Medina during a time of hardship, an act so significant it left a lasting impression on the entire community. But even that wasn't the most remarkable moment of his generosity. What he did later in life is something that still stuns people who hear it for the first time. Abdul Rahman ibn Awf was among a very small, select group of companions who were given the glad tidings of paradise by the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ while they were still alive, a group known as Asharah Mubashsharah, the 10 promised paradise. Think about that for a moment. Out of the thousands of companions who lived alongside the Prophet ﷺ, only 10 received this direct promise. And Abdul Rahman ibn Awf, the merchant who once walked into Medina with nothing, was one of them. This wasn't a reward for his wealth. It was a reflection of his faith, his sacrifice, and how he used what Allah gave him. He understood something that many wealthy people throughout history never grasped, that wealth is a test, not a trophy. And it's exactly this understanding that led to what many consider the most powerful moment of his entire life. As Abdul Rahman ibn Awf grew older, he made preparations that revealed the depth of his character even in his final years. He left instructions for large portions of his wealth to be distributed among the remaining companions of Badr, the veterans of the very first major battle in Islamic history, regardless of whether they still needed it or not simply as a gesture of honor and gratitude. Even Aisha, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, is reported to have prayed for him because of a generous gift he sent her, recognizing the purity of his intention behind it. He didn't hoard his fortune until the very end. He didn't leave people guessing about his legacy. He made sure that even his last acts on earth reflected the same values that defined his entire life: generosity, sincerity, and faith. And this is where his story reaches its most powerful lesson, one that applies just as much today as it did over 1,000 years ago. Abdul Rahman ibn Awf could have easily accepted half of his brother's wealth on the very first day he arrived in Medina. He could have taken the easy path. Instead, he chose to build something with his own hands, trusting that his effort combined with his faith would bring him more than any handout ever could. He proved that true wealth was never about the size of his fortune. It was about what he did with it, and more importantly, who he remained while holding it. In a world where success is often measured by how much a person accumulates, his story flips that idea completely. He shows us that the real measure of success is what you're willing to give away and why. That's the lesson history left behind through one man's incredible journey from arriving in a new city with absolutely nothing to becoming one of the wealthiest men of his era, to leaving this world with something far greater than money. It's easy to look at a story like this and think it belongs only to the past, a nice piece of history, nothing more. But sit with it for a second, because the questions his life raises are still the exact questions we struggle with today. How do you handle wealth without letting it change who you are? How do you stay generous when you finally have enough to be selfish? How do you build something from nothing without cutting corners along the way? Abdul Rahman ibn Awf answered all of these questions not with words, but with actions. Over the course of decades, he never once let his fortune become the center of his identity. He remained until his final breath, a man defined by his faith first and his wealth a distant second. That's rare in any era. It was rare then, and if we're honest, it's even rarer now. If this story moved you even a little, imagine what it must have felt like to actually witness it firsthand. If you want more stories like this, real accounts of the companions who shaped history through faith, sacrifice, and character, make sure you subscribe, because this is only the beginning. There are more stories coming, and trust me, some of them will surprise you even more than this one did.